The human design logic circuit is a subcircuit of the collective circuit, and it is the energy that drives us to analyze, experiment, and improve our world based on the patterns that we have observed so that we can create a better future collectively. In this episode, I'll go over what this circuit is, how people with strong activations in this circuit experience this energy, how they impact others, and the emotional themes tied to this energy, as well as how it applies to business and relationships. Whether or not you have logical energy in your chart, this episode is for you because you're going to be impacted by this energy either if you have it in your own design or you will pick it up from other people around you and the planetary transits. Welcome to Heart-Centered Human Design, Emotional Intelligence, and Conscious Business, the show that empowers heart-centered entrepreneurs to use human design and emotional intelligence to create meaningful success, work-life balance, and transform their passion and purpose into impact and prosperity. I'm your host, Vanessa Naja, and I love sharing this incredible system with you so that you can be on purpose and fulfill your potential. If you haven't yet, make sure to get your free human design purpose guide, which goes into a little bit of detail into your specific unique design, your purpose, as well as the fears and some of the emotional themes that you may have to alchemize in order to really fulfill your potential. It is free, it is customized to your design, and you can get it at vanessanaja.com/free guide. I will also link it in the show notes. So just a little review of circuitry in human design. This is how your energy flows through your body graph. And we all have some of this energy defined, meaning we have consistent access to it. It is something that we broadcast out into the world. It is our nature. And in your chart, this energy is going to be colored in. We also have undefined areas of our chart, and this is where we are taking in this energy from other people, amplifying it, and we are able to become really wise about it. So neither is better or worse, and we all have a combination of defined and undefined, our nature versus our nurture. And when we're living in alignment, we are always going to have access to all the energy that we need. Either we will be expressing our own defined energy in the highest frequency, or we will be able to take in the energy of others that we need at any given time. So really it comes back to living in alignment, and you will always have what you need when you need it. So the logic circuit is a subcircuit of the collective circuit. And this is very much focused on recognizing patterns and analyzing them and finding ways to improve things so that we can progress together as a collective. Now, remember, this is collective energy. That means it is not personal. It is not meant to be turned in on yourself or used necessarily in relationships with your loved ones and people that you're close to. It's very much about improving the collective, improvements for humanity as a whole. So in this circuit, we figure out what works, we test it, we enhance it, we improve it, we create systems that basically improve the future based on the patterns that we've observed in the past. So there is a lot of pattern recognition in this circuitry. If you're someone that has a lot of logic in your chart, you probably notice all kinds of little things. You probably pick out all sorts of little patterns. I actually have a lot of logic in my chart, and back in my early days of college, I took a class that was designed to really, you took all kinds of tests like Myers-Briggs and all types of things to really see where your strengths lie so you can shape your collegiate path in the best way possible. And I scored so high on logic and pattern recognition that I actually was contacted by the government of the US about potential intelligence work, which totally not my thing. I definitely didn't go for it, but that is how logic works. Now, the sensing circuit, or the abstract circuit, which I'll talk about in the next episode, is the other half of the collective circuit. And this is very different from the logic circuit because in the abstract, this is more about personal experience, the things that we have learned through what we have experienced in our life, and then sharing that with others. And logic, which is also about sharing is a big theme in the collective circuit, is actually about sharing the patterns that we have observed, correcting those patterns, improving them, and sharing with the collective what we've learned so we can move together into the future. The collective circuit is about improving humanity as a whole, but the two subcircuits do it slightly differently. Now, in the high expression, this energy is very much about discernment, innovation, pattern recognition, and the ability to see what works and what doesn't work. And this can be in science, in business, in even in personal relationships, in systems. And there is an element here of really being able to explain complex ideas in ways that other people can understand. People with a lot of logical energy in their chart are driven by the need to improve and refine systems for the good of the whole, for the collective. Now, in the low expression, this energy can turn in on itself or on its close relationships. It can be incredibly self-critical. It can be very critical of other people. It's always important to remember that this energy is designed for the collective. It's not meant to be turned in on the self, and it's not meant to be turned in on close relationships. It's for collective improvement. In the low expression, this energy can also be overly skeptical, questioning and doubting everything, dismissing anything that doesn't fit their mental framework. These are the people that basically, unless there's a double-blind study that proves it, then it's not true. So that is something to watch out for, is that being overly skeptical. Doubt does live in this energy, and this is about doubting information. It's not about self-doubt. It's really about doubting information, questioning it, testing it, but really finding a balance, because remember, this is not the only circuit in the chart. There is all kinds of other circuitry that balances out. People that are in the low expression of this can be super overly rigid. Perfectionism lives here, and people with this can also get really stuck in analysis paralysis, and then they don't make any decisions and nothing actually happens, which can be very detrimental, both in business and in personal relationships. So even though this energy isn't necessarily directly about personal relationships, it can influence them. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the episode. This can also in the low energy show up as becoming like really obsessive compulsive, becoming obsessive about proving things, about being right, about trying to convince others of their point of view. And they can also get really frustrated when other people don't necessarily get it. And it's important to remember that we're all wired differently, and not everybody sees the world as you see it if you have a lot of logical energy in your design. So the logic circuit moves through 7 centers in the human design body graph. We have both the head center and the root center. We have mental pressure and inspiration from the head center and adrenaline pressure from the root center. And then we move down from the head into the ajna, conceptualization, mental concepts, into the throat center of expression and action, and to the spleen center, intuition, survival instinct. And from the root, moving up into the sacral center, the energy resource center, up into the G center, the center for identity and direction, and then back up to the throat center. Now, notice that there is no solar plexus in the logic circuit. That means there is no emotional energy here. This is logic. This can be kind of cold, cool energy. It's not that warmth that you get from the solar plexus. So it operates very differently. This is about facts. It's about logic. It's about details. It's about experimentation, and then expressing what we have learned through that in the throat center. Now, the channels of the logic circuit, we start with the inspiration, the head center to the ajna center in the 63-4 channel. This is where we start with our doubts and our questions, and we try to answer those questions through the conceptualization of the ajna center. Then we have the 1762 channel, which is where we translate these patterns into opinions, and we gather the details that really back up those opinions. Now, moving from the bottom up, we have channel 52-9, the channel of concentration, which moves from the root center to the sacral center. And this is where the focus, the stillness, and the concentration comes in, to really work with these patterns, to work through the experimentation of the logic circuit. We also have the channel 515, which then moves from the sacral center to the G center. This is where logic aligns with natural cycles and timing and ensures consistency and adaptability in systems that are structured and logical. Then we have the channel 731, the channel of the alpha. This is the leadership channel of the logic circuit, and this is logical, elected, democratic leadership that ensures efficiency and higher functionality. Going back to the root, we have the channel 5818, which moves from the root to the spleen center. And this is about the drive to correct and improve things. There is really that ability to see patterns, to see things that aren't working, and the desire to improve them for the sake of joy and just improving the collective in general. And then the last channel is the 4816 channel, which moves from the spleen to the throat. And this is about depth and skill, and it allows for mastery through repetition, through repeating a pattern over and over again until it is perfected. All of these channels together form the entire logic circuit. Now, if you have any definition in these channels, if anything is colored in here, whether you have a gate or you have a channel, you have activations in the logic circuit. You may have a little bit, you may have a lot, you may have a mixture of activation through the different circuits like I do, or you may rely more heavily in one area or another area. Now, remember, you do have access to everything. It's just a matter of whether it's consistent for you and you have access to it all the time, if it's defined or colored in for you, or if it is an area that you amplify, taken from others, and are able to become incredibly wise about, because anything that's undefined in your chart, you actually have the possibility of experiencing that energy in an infinite amount of ways, whereas things that are defined in your chart, you really experience in a consistent way that is very specific to you. Now, as I said before, there's no solar plexus in the logic circuit. So when we're talking about emotional aspects here, there's no emotional wave here, but there are some emotional undercurrents that can show up here, especially when it comes to doubt, self-doubt, turning doubt onto others. And there are elements here that, of course, impact self-worth, confidence, and connection with this energy. So if you're doubting yourself and others all of the time, that can obviously create problems. There is also a pressure here to be right, which can trigger anxiety and insecurity, and also create a lot of arguments in relationship. Logic is based on proving what works and, that desire to be right, like when you get into arguments about stupid little things because you really want to be right, that can really impact your relationships. So if this is something that comes up for you, I definitely recommend that saying of pick your battles. Like, is this something that you absolutely need to be right about? Obviously, there are going to be times where you do really want to prove your logical point. And when that's required, absolutely. But remember, you don't always need to be right. You don't always need to prove your point. Sometimes you really want to put the relationships before the logic. Logical energy also really appreciates recognition. And this is something that when their pattern recognition, their insights, their problem-solving skills are recognized and acknowledged, it makes them feel really good. And if they're not recognized, that can actually lead to frustration or bitterness. So if you have a lot of logic in your chart, recognition is something that's going to be important to you. And for your loved ones that have a lot of logic, recognizing them, sharing with them, letting them know that you appreciate their gifts, their skills, their talents, really can do a lot for the relationship. When people with a lot of logic circuitry find clarity in their life too, that can be extremely satisfying and bring a lot of success. So the process of problem solving, refining systems, or actually mastering a skill, and that skill can be anything. It can be an instrument, it can be dance, it can be sports, whatever it is, a skill that requires repetition and practice in order to really refine and succeed at it. This can bring so much fulfillment to somebody that has a lot of logic in their design. The logic circuit does run through two awareness centers, the ajna and the spleen center, and all awareness centers come with some very specific fears attached to each of the gates. Now, in the spleen center, we have the fear of gate 48, which is the fear of inadequacy. And it is so important here to know, especially if this is defined in your chart or it's a significant aspect. So it can be significant even if it's undefined. For example, for somebody who has split definition and this is a bridging gate, that fear of inadequacy can really hold people back. And the thing with gate 48, this is very much about depth. This is called the well. People that have gate 48 in their chart, they're really searching for depth. And they know so much more than they give themselves credit for. So if this is an energy in your design, just trust that you know that you have the depth because this is a natural part of who you are. Then we have gate 18. And I know this one well because I have this one defined in my chart twice, and it is only one of three gates I've defined twice in my chart. This is the fear of authority and also the fear of imperfection. So it can show up as either or both. And like I said before, perfectionism is part of the logic circuit. I do have quite a bit of logic in my chart, and I struggled with perfectionism for so long in my life. I would create all of these things all the time. I never put them out because they were not perfect. And I really had to work on this to the point where I actually go out of my way to put out things that are imperfect. And my podcast is a perfect example of the imperfection in my life. It is by no means perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I have been, I think I'm close to 80 some episodes now. I have been repeating this pattern. This is something logically you repeat, refine over time. You continue to do it over and over and over. And as you do it, you get better. You have to be okay with things not being perfect because perfection doesn't really exist. It's striving for excellence is the best you can do. Now, the fear of authority, this is that fear of somebody that you consider an authority coming down on you and saying that you did or said something that is wrong. This is a big one that can come up in business. Like if you are sharing your own unique perspectives and somebody that you studied with disagrees and comes down on you, is like, no, that's not right. Or we see so many systems, and human design is a perfect one. I mean, there are schools of thought in human design that say that if it's not this exact way that it was originally channeled, it's not human design. And I totally disagree with that because I absolutely believe in evolution and moving forward, and that there are a lot of different perspectives out there. And there's always that fear that some higher up is going to say, no, you're wrong and you can't say that. And, that is that fear of authority. So it's really important to be aware of both of those because this can really hold you back in business if you're not sharing anything because you're afraid of authority or somebody telling you you're wrong, or you're afraid of imperfection, or you're afraid of that inadequacy that somehow you're not good enough or what you're sharing is not good enough. Now, moving up to the Ajna Center, we also have two fear gates here. We have gate 4, which this is the fear, the anxiety over chaos. And it's that mental anxiety that you may never find order in your life, that you'll always be in chaos. And it's also about being anxious about always needing to have the right answers to give. This is where the answers are constantly being searched for. And there really can be that fear of being wrong and being challenged. Then it's important with this energy to trust that the right answers will come at the right time and that you don't have to figure it out or force it on your own. When you have this energy in your chart and you're always trying to figure it out or trying to force some kind of an answer, it's actually going to create more anxiety versus if you go off, you do something that you love, the answers will just come through. This is that, that typical, like you're in the shower singing, having fun, and all of a sudden you get these big epiphanies, or you're on a run, you're not trying to figure out the problem, and all of a sudden something comes through. So allowing yourself that time in that space with this energy to trust that the answers will come when you need them. And then, of course, we also have gate 17. This is another one that I have. I have the entire channel. And this is mental anxiety that your opinions will be challenged because gate 17 is the gate of opinions. And with this anxiety, you may not share your opinions because of that fear. And the thing about opinions, it's really about having the details to back up your opinion and allowing yourself time to form valid opinions and being open to other people's opinions as well. Now, with opinions, this is something that everybody's got an opinion, but not everybody wants to hear your opinion. And this energy is technically projected energy. And what that means is that in order for this to really land, it needs to be asked for. So just blatantly sharing your opinions all the time is going to potentially land on deaf ears versus if somebody asks for your opinion, that means they are actually open to receiving it. And then sharing your opinion is going to be a lot smoother. The other thing, you want to really take your time to form solid opinions before you share them and not just blurt out any old thing that comes through you as an opinion. And again, it's important to remember that opinions are not facts. It is okay to change your opinions. More details may come in, more things may be revealed. And you want to be really careful about black and white thinking. With logic in general, this can be very black and white thinking. And that can create a lot of issues, both in business, in relationships. It can be very narrow-minded, very closed off. And I encourage you, when you notice this in yourself, to step back and take a wider perspective, because one of the higher frequencies of, for example, gate 17 opinions is actually farsightedness, being able to see all sides of things. Logic is very left-brained. And we'll talk more about the right brain approach next week when we talk about abstract circuitry. But that left brain approach can really lose the forest for the trees. So when you can step back a little bit, kind of zoom out and see the bigger picture, that can really help with the anxiety and the struggles and the rigidity that come with a lot of logical circuitry in the design. Now, when it comes to business, this circuitry is the foundation of systems, of strategy, and efficiency, and it is very critical in the business world. It is great for problem-solving roles. People that have a lot of this energy are great at data analysis, anything with pattern recognition, research, system optimization, technology, and improving processes. You see this a lot in people like data scientists, engineers, computer scientists, information technology, all of that good stuff really thrives on having logic in the chart. This drives innovation through continuous refinement and perfecting existing systems, ensuring functionality. This is the leadership energy here. Again, is a 731. This is leadership that is effective when it's backed by credibility, when it is elected leadership. This needs to be elected. This guides people that want to be guided by this energy. Structured environments are really beneficial for people that have a lot of logic in their chart. They really prefer clear systems, data-driven decisions, repeatable processes, that type of thing. And of course, there can be an element of struggling with adaptability here. So it's important to be open to other aspects. There can be a resistance to change. There can be that over-analysis of decision-making and getting stuck in perfectionism. And of course, the other thing that shows up here is strategy. And I'm not talking human design strategy. I'm talking business strategy. Now, here is the thing with strategy, or, the strategies that we apply in our businesses. When it comes to human design and in general, not all strategies are going to work for everybody. You have to really be in alignment with the strategy, because here's the thing. If somebody else's cookie cutter strategy was going to work for everybody that learned that strategy would be successful. All strategies will work for some people, but not all strategies will work for everybody. And I'm sure you have tried plenty of things that have been tried and proven by experts that didn't work for you because they were not aligned for you. And that is just something that's really important to remember. When it comes to business, you want to be in alignment with your design and what works for you, following your strategy and authority, and not forcing strategies that work for somebody else in the hope that they're going to work for you, because if they're not aligned for you, they are not going to work. There's so much about the energy behind the strategy that really makes the difference. It's not just the strategy. So for people that have a lot of logic circuitry in their chart, business success really comes from balancing structure with flexibility, being open to other ways of doing it, trusting your own process while remaining open to new insights. And remember, coming back to your strategy and authority, really embodying your own unique way of making decisions and knowing what is correct for you is absolutely essential here. Now, when it comes to relationships with logic circuitry, remember this is collective. It is not meant to be turned in onto yourself in forms of self-doubt or criticism. It's not meant to be turned onto others. And people that have a lot of logic circuitry in their chart can appreciate logic and rational thinking. And if you're with somebody who doesn't have a lot of logic circuitry and they're more on the emotional end of the spectrum, they're more intuitive or emotional in general, those partners might feel dismissed if you're always analyzing things logically. So again, understanding your own design as well as the design of your partners and your loved ones and how they process their energy and their emotions can be really beneficial to really create the most healthy and beautiful relationships. Having healthy debate with partners that have a lot of logical circuitry can also be something that they really appreciate. And I know having this in my design, it is so important for me to be able to really have these in-depth discussions, sharing our opinions, sharing how we view patterns is something that I absolutely love doing with my loved ones. It can be an amazing bonding experience for somebody that has logic in their chart. And even if you don't have a lot of logic in your chart, you can still have these discussions and really see how your partner views the world through their logic. And remember, anytime you are in connection with somebody, you are going to be picking up that energy from them and amplifying it. So it's an amazing opportunity to really gain the wisdom that you are capable of through the undefined aspects of your chart. Now, remember that logical energy exists everywhere. It is everywhere in society to influence us through science, education, medicine, business technology, system building, the media. It is how we analyze problems, evaluate risks, and oftentimes it is how a lot of people make decisions when they're not living in alignment. So it's so important to be aware of your decision-making authority comes from the inside, not from the outside. We are all conditioned by logic all of the time and over our lifetimes. So many of the systems and the media, science, education are based on logic. And there are many different ways of knowing that are not logical. And I've already discussed this in a lot of the previous episodes, like the knowing circuit. And understanding how you are conditioned by logic and really moving into your own inner authority is so important here. Being aware of how this shows up in your children as well. So school rewards logic. If you are a very logical person, you probably did well in school. You recognize patterns. You were able to think logically and explain things logically. And that is often what school tests for. This was true for me, the way my design is configured. I always did really well in school and always came really easily for me with a lot of different aspects in my design. However, when you have children that have very little logic in their chart, but they have their strengths lie in other places, it's really important to recognize this, that traditional schooling is actually not for everybody. And as our eras are changing, things are changing, you are seeing people move away from that traditional system and finding ways of educating and learning that are actually correct for the individual. And it's not always going to be logical. And that being said, of course, there is that place, and that place will always be there for learning logically. And that is amazing for people that have a lot of this energy defined in their chart. But being open, understanding how you've been conditioned by logic, what is actually correct for you, what is not, because there are so many times that people really question themselves. They think they're not smart. They think they're not enough in some way because they don't fall into this way that we've all been conditioned. It's important to recognize, it's important to understand this about yourself if you do not have a lot of logic in your chart, about your loved ones if they don't have a lot of logic in your chart, and finding ways that work for you to learn. Finding your own inner strengths. This is all laid out in your human design. And if you want to dive deeper on that, I would love to share your design with you through a reading. I will link how you can do that in the show notes. Don't forget to also get your free human design purpose guide, a customized personal report to you about your human design purpose. I'll highlight some of your strengths and opportunities, fears, all of that good stuff at vanessanaja.com/free guide. Link is in the show notes. And I would love to hear how this landed for you. Do you have a lot of logic in your chart? Do you know somebody that does? How have you observed this energy? Please leave me a comment. I would love to hear. Thank you so much for listening or watching.